Hello, and welcome back to the Hounds of Baskerville. We are now on Chapter 4, which is entitled Sir Henry Baskerville. Our breakfast table was cleared early, and Holmes waited in his dressing gown for the promised interview. Our clients were punctual in their appointment, for the clock had just struck 10 when Dr. Mortimer was shown up, followed by the young baronet. The latter was a small, dark-eyed man alert, dark-eyed man, about 30 years of age, very sturdily built, with thick black eyebrows and a strong, pugnacious face. He wore a ruddy-tinted tweed suit and had a weather-beaten appearance of one who had spent most of this time in the open air. Yet there was something in his steady eye and quiet assurance of his bearing which indicated the gentleman. "This is Sir Henry Baskerville," said Dr. Mortimer. "Why, yes," said he, "and the strange thing is, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, that if my friend had not proposed coming round to you this morning, I should have come of my own account. I understand that you think out little puzzles, and I have one this morning, which wants more thinking out than I am able to give it." "Pray, take a seat, Sir Henry. Do I understand you to say that you have had yourself some remarkable experience since you arrived in London?" "Nothing of much importance, Mr. Holmes. Only a joke, so like as not. It was this letter, if you can call it a letter, which reached me this morning." He laid an envelope on the table, and we all bent over it. It was of common quality, grayish in color. The address, Sir Henry Baskerville, Northumberland Hotel, was printed in rough letters, the postmark Charing Cross, and the date of posting the preceding evening. "Who knew that you were going to the Northumberland Hotel?" asked Holmes, glancing keenly across at our visitor. "No one could have known. We only decided after I met Dr. Mortimer." "But Dr. Mortimer was no doubt already stopping there." "No, I have been staying with a friend," said the doctor. "There's no possible indication that we intended to go to this hotel." Someone seems to be very deeply interested in your movements." Out of the envelope, he took a half sheet of foolscap paper folded into 4. This he opened and spread flat upon the table. Across the middle of it was a single sentence which had been formed by the expedient pasting of printed words upon it. It ran, "As you value your life and your reason, keep away from the moor." The word moor only was printed in ink. "Now," said Sir Henry Baskerville, "perhaps you will tell me, Mr. Holmes, what in thunder is the meaning of that, and who takes so much interest in my affairs?" "What do you make of it, Dr. Mortimer? You must allow that there is nothing supernatural about this at any rate." "No, sir, but it might very well come from someone who is convinced that the business is supernatural." "What business?" said Sir Henry sharply. "It seems to me that all you gentlemen know a great deal more than I do about my own affairs." "You shall share our knowledge before you leave this room, Sir Henry, I promise you that," said Sherlock Holmes. "We confine ourselves to the present with your permission to this very interesting document, which must have been put together and posted yesterday evening. Have you yesterday's Times, Watson?" "It's right here in the corner." "Might I trouble you for it? The inside page, please, with the leading articles." He glanced swiftly over it, running his eyes up and down the columns. "Capital article this on free trade. Permit me to give you an extract from it. You may be cajoled into imagining that your own special trade or your own industry will be encouraged by this protective tariff, but it stands to reason that legislation must be in the long run keep away wealth from the country, diminish the value of our imports, and lower the general condition of life on this island. What do you think of that, Watson?" cried Holmes in high glee, rubbing his hands together with satisfaction. "Don't you think that is an admirable sentiment?" Dr. Mortimer looked at Holmes with an air of professional interest, and Sir Henry Baskerville turned a pair of puzzled dark eyes upon me. "I don't know much about the tariff and things of that kind," said he, "but it seems to me we've got a bit off the trail as far as that note is concerned." "On the contrary, I think we're particularly hot upon the trail, Sir Henry. Watson here knows more about my methods than you do, but I fear he has not quite grasped the significance of this sentence." No, I confess that I see no connection. And yet, my dear Watson, there is so very close a connection that one is extracted out of the other. You, your, life, reason, value, keep away, from the. Don't you see now whence these words have been taken? By thunder, you are right. Well, if that isn't smart, cried Sir Henry. If any possible doubt remained, it is settled by the fact that keep away and from the are cut out in one piece. Well now, so it is. Really, Mr. Holmes, this exceeds anything I could have imagined, said Dr. Mortimer, gazing at my friend in amazement. I could understand anyone saying that these words are from a newspaper, but that you should name which, add that it came from the leading article, is really one of the most remarkable things I have ever known. How did you do it? I presume, Doctor, that you could tell the skull of a Negro from that of an Eskimo. Most certainly. But how? Because that is my special hobby. The differences are obvious. The supraorbital crest, the facial angle, the maxillary curve, But this is my special hobby, and the differences are equally obvious. There is as much difference to my eyes between the leaded bourgeois type of the Times article and the slovenly print of the evening halfpenny paper as there could be between your Negro and your Eskimo. The detection of the types of one of these most elementary branches of knowledge to the special expert of crime. Though I confess that once when I was very young, I confused the Leeds Mercury with the Western Morning News. But the Times leader is incredibly distinctive, and these words could have been taken from nothing else. As it was done yesterday, the strong probability is that we should find words in yesterday's issue. So far as I can follow you then, Mr. Holmes, said Sir Henry Baskerville, someone cut these messages out with a scissor. Nail scissors, said Holmes. You can see that it was a very short-bladed scissors, since the cutter had to take 2 snips over keep away. There is so. Someone then cut this message out with a pair of short-bladed scissors, pasted it with paste, gum, said Holmes, with gum onto the paper. But I want to know why the word more should have been written. Because he could not find it in print. The other words were all simple, and might be found in any issue, but more would have been less common. Why, of course that would explain it. Have you read anything else in the message, Mr. Holmes? There are 1 or 2 indications, and yet the utmost pains have been taken to remove all clues. The address, you observe, is printed in rough characters, but the Times is the paper which is seldom found in any hands but those of the highly educated. We may take it, therefore, that the letter was composed by an educated man who wished to pose as an uneducated one, and his effort to conceal his own writing suggests that the writing may be known, or come to be known, by you. Again, you will observe that the words are not gummed in on an accurate line, and that some are much higher than the others. Life, for example, is quite out of its proper place. That may point to carelessness, or it may point to agitation and hurry on the part of the cutter. On the whole, I incline to the latter view, since the matter was evidently important, and it is unlikely that the composer of such letter would be careless. If he were in a hurry, it opens up the intriguing question, why should he be in a hurry, since any letter posted up to early morning would reach Sir Henry before he would leave his hotel? Did the composer fear interruption? And from whom? We are coming now rather into the region of guesswork, said Dr. Mortimer. Say, rather into the region where we balance probabilities and choose the most likely. It is the scientific use of the imagination, but we always have some material basis on which to start our speculation. Now, you would call it a guess, no doubt, but I am certain that this address has been written from within a hotel. How in the world can you say that? If you examine it carefully, you will see that both pen and the ink have given the writer trouble. The pen has sputtered twice in a single word, and has run dry 3 times in a short address, showing that there was very little ink in the bottle. Now, a private pen or ink bottle is seldom allowed to be in such a state, and the combination of the two must be quite rare. But you know the hotel ink and the hotel pen, and it is rare to get anything else. Yes, I have very little hesitation in saying that we could examine the waste paper baskets of the hotels around Charing Cross until we found the remains of a mutilated Times leader. We could lay our hands straight on the person who sent this singular message. Hello, what is this? He was carefully examining the foolscap upon which the words were pasted, holding it only an inch or 2 from his eyes. Well, Nothing, said he, throwing it down. It is a blank half sheet of paper without even a watermark upon it. I think we have drawn as much as we can from this curious letter. And now, Sir Henry, is there anything else of interest that has happened to you since you have been in London? Why, no, Mr. Holmes, I think not. You have not observed anyone follow or watch you. I seem to have walked right into the thick of a dime novel, said our visitor. Why in thunder should anyone follow or watch me? We are coming to that. You have nothing else to report to us before we go into this matter. Well, it depends on what you think is worth reporting. I think anything out of the ordinary routine of life is well worth reporting. Sir Henry smiled. I don't know much of British life yet, for I have spent nearly all my time in the States and in Canada. But I hope to lose one of your boots is not part of an ordinary routine of life over here. You have lost one of your boots? My dear sir, cried Dr. Mortimer, it has only been mislaid. You will find it when you return to the hotel. What use is it of troubling Mr. Holmes with trifles of this kind? Well, he asked me of anything outside the ordinary routine. Exactly, said Holmes, however foolish the incident may seem. You've lost one of your boots, you say. Well, mislaid it anyhow. I put them both outside my door last night, and there was only one this morning. I could get no sense out of the chap who cleans them. The worst of all is that I only bought the pair last night in the Strand, and I have never had them on. If you had never worn them, why did you put them out to be cleaned? They were tan boots and had never been varnished. That's why I put them out. Then I understand that upon your arrival yesterday, you went out at once and bought a pair of boots? I did a good deal of shopping. Dr. Mortimer went around with me. You see, if I'm to be a squire down there, I must dress the part, and it may be that I have gotten a little careless in my ways out west. Among other things, I bought these brown boots, gave $6 for them, and had one stolen before I ever had them on my feet. It seems a singularly useless thing to steal, said Sherlock Holmes. I confess that I share Dr. Mortimer's belief that it will not be long before the missing boot is found. And now, gentlemen, said the baronet with decision, it seems to me that I have spoken quite enough about how little I know. It is time that you kept your promise and give me a full account of what we are all driving at. Your request is a very reasonable one, Holmes answered. Dr. Mortimer, I think you could not do better than to tell your story as you told it to us. Thus encouraged, our scientific friend drew his papers from his pocket and presented the whole case as he had done the morning before. Sir Henry Baskerville listened with the deepest attention, with the occasional exclamation of surprise. Well, I seem to have come into an inheritance with a vengeance, said he when the long narrative was finished. Of course, I've heard of the Hounds since I was in the nursery. It's a pet story of the family, though I never thought of taking it seriously before. But as to my uncle's death, well, it all seems to be boiling up in my head and I can't clear it yet. You don't seem to have quite made up your mind whether it's a case for a policeman or a clergyman. Precisely. And now there's the affair of the letter to me at the hotel. I suppose it fits into its place. It seems to show that someone knows more than we do about what goes upon the moor, said Dr. Mortimer. And also, said Holmes, that someone is not ill-disposed towards you, since they warn you of danger. Or it may be that they wish for their own purposes to scare me away. Well, of course, that is possible also. I'm very much indebted to you, Dr. Mortimer, for introducing me to a problem which presents several interesting alternatives. But the practical point which we now have to decide, Sir Henry, is whether or not it is advisable for you to go to Baskerville Hall. Why should I not go? There seems to be danger. Do you mean danger from this family fiend, or do you mean danger from human beings? Well, that is what we have to find out. Whichever it is, my answer is fixed. There is no devil in hell, Mr. Holmes, and there is no man upon earth who can prevent me from going to the home of my own people, and you will take that as my final answer. His dark brows knitted together, and his face flushed to a dusky red as he spoke. It was evident that the fiery temper of the Baskervilles was not extinct in their last representative. Meanwhile, said he, I have hardly had time to think over all of you've told me. It is a big thing for a man to have to understand and decide in one sitting. I should like to have a quiet hour by myself to make up my mind. Now look here, Mr. Holmes, it's 11:30 now, and I'm going right back away to my hotel. Suppose you and your friend Dr. Watson come around and lunch with us at 2. I'll be able to tell you more clearly how this thing strikes me. Is that convenient to you, Watson? Perfectly. Then you may expect us. Shall I have a cab called? I prefer to walk, for this affair has me flurried rather. I'll join you in the walk with pleasure, said his companion. Then we'll meet again at 2 o'clock. Au revoir and good morning. We heard the steps of our visitors descend the stair and the bang of the front door. In an instant, Holmes had changed from the languid dreamer to a man of action. Your hat and boots, Watson, quick! Not a moment to lose! He rushed into his room in his dressing gown and was back again in a few seconds in a frock coat. We hurried together down the stairs and into the street. Dr. Mortimer and Baskerville were still visible about 200 yards ahead of us in the direction of Oxford Street. Shall I run and stop them? Not for the world, my dear Watson. I'm perfectly satisfied with your company if you will tolerate mine. Our friends are wise, for it is certainly a fine morning for a walk. He quickened his pace till we had decreased the distance which divided us by about half. Then, still keeping 100 yards behind, we followed into Oxford Street and so down Regent Street. Once our friends stopped and stared into a shop window, upon which Holmes did the same. An instant afterwards he gave a little cry of satisfaction, and following the direction of his eager eyes, I saw that a hansom cab with a man which had halted on the other side of the street was now proceeding slowly onward again. That's our man, Watson. Come along. We'll have to get a good look at him if we can do no more. In that instant, I was aware of a bushy black beard and a pair of piercing eyes which turned upon us through the side of the window of the cab. Instantly, the trap door at the top flew up, something was screamed to the driver, and the cab flew madly off down Regent Street. Holmes looked eagerly around for another, but no empty one was in sight. Then he dashed in wild pursuit amid the stream of traffic. The start was too great, and already the cab was out of sight. There now, said Holmes bitterly as he emerged panting and white with vexation from the tides of the vehicles. Was there ever such a bad luck and bad management too? Watson, if you are an honest man, you will record also this and set it against my successes. Who was the man? I have not an idea. A spy? Well, it is evident from what we heard of from the Baskervilles that he's been very closely shadowed by someone since he has been in town. How else could it be known so quickly that it was the Northumberland Hotel which he had chosen? If they had followed him the first day, I argued that they would follow him also the second. You may have observed that I twice strolled over to the window while Dr. Mortimer was reading his legend. Yes, I remember. I was looking for loiterers in the street, but I saw none. We are dealing with a clever man, Watson. This matter cuts very deep, and though I have not finally made up my mind whether it is benevolent or malevolent an agency which is in touch with us, I am conscious always of power and design. When our friends left, I at once followed them in the hopes of marking down their invisible intendant. So wily he was that he had not trusted himself upon foot, but he had availed himself of a cab so that he could loiter behind or dash past them, and so escape their notice. His method has the additional advantage that if they were to take a cab, he was ready to follow them. It has, however, one obvious disadvantage. It puts him at the power of the cabman. Exactly. What a pity that we did not get the number. My dear Watson, clumsy as I may have been, you surely do not seriously imagine that I neglected to get the number. Number 2704 is our man, but that is of no use to us at the moment. I fail to see how you could have done more. On observing the cab, I should have instantly turned and walked the other direction. I should then, at my leisure, have hired a second cab, and followed the first at a respectful distance, or better still, have driven to Northumberland Hotel and waited there. When our unknown had followed Baskerville home, we should have had the opportunity of playing his own game upon him and seeing where he made for. As it is, by indiscreet eagerness, which was taken advantage of with extraordinary quickness and the energy of our opponent, we have betrayed ourselves and lost our man. We had been sauntering slowly down Regent Street during this conversation, and Dr. Mortimer, with his companion, had long vanished in front of us. There is no object in our following them, said Holmes. The shadow has departed and will not return. We must see what further cards we have in our hand and play them at our discretion. Would you swear to that man's face within the cab? I could swear only to the beard. So could I, from which I gather in all probability is a false one. A clever man upon so delicate an errand has no use for a beard, save to conceal his features. Come in here, Watson. He turned into one of the district messenger's offices, where he was warmly greeted by the manager. Ah, Wilson, I see you have not forgotten the little case in which I had the good fortune to help you. No, sir, indeed not, I have not. You saved my good name and perhaps my life. My dear fellow, you exaggerate. I have some recollection, Wilson, that you had among your boys a lad named Cartwright, who showed some ability during the investigation. Yes, sir. He is still with us. Could you ring him up? Thank you. I shall be glad to have change for this £5 note, also. A lad of 14, with a bright, keen face, had obeyed the summons of the manager. He stood now gazing with great reverence at the famous detective. Let me have the hotel directory, said Holmes. Thank you. Now, Cartwright, there are the names of 23 hotels here, all in the immediate neighborhood of Charing Cross. Do you see? Yes, sir. You will visit each of these in turn. Yes, sir. You will begin in each case by giving the outside porter 1 shilling. Here are 23 shillings. Yes, sir. You will tell them that you want the waste paper of yesterday. You will say that an important telegram has been miscarried and that you are looking for it. You understand? Yes, sir. But what you are really looking for is the center page of the Times with some holes cut in it with scissors. Here is a copy of the Times. It is this page. You could easily recognize it, could you not? Yes, sir. In each case, the outside porter will send for the hall porter, to whom you will give 1 shilling. Here are 23 shillings. You will then learn in possibly 20 cases out of the 23 that the waste of the day before has been burned or removed. In the 3 cases, you will be shown a heap of paper, and you will look for this page of the Times among it. The odds are enormously against you finding it. Here are 10 shillings in case of emergencies. Let me have a report by wire at Baker Street before evening. And now, Watson, it only remains for us to find out by wire the identity of our cabman, number 2704. Then we will drop by the Bond Picture Galleries and fill the time until we are due at the hotel. And that is Chapter 4 of The Hounds of Baskerville. I hope to see you soon for Chapter 5. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.